We in America have a massive savings problem. While the flow of money is the most important thing when it comes to the banking, but you can't flow money that you don't have.
Infinite banking is not complicated. It's actually very simple. If you watch the TikTok hype videos, if you watch this kind of treatment of this as if this is just a way to invest, this is a means to an end. The end is still the investing. If that's what you're focusing on, you're still focusing on the third order effect. You're skipping over the real value in your system.
Banking is the most profitable business in the world. So do it, take it over, become the banker. There's a way, and we'll show you. Good morning, West Coast time. What's going on?
What is up? What is up?
Nothing, man. Just going through all these motions with all these real estate changes and trying to plug away at work and life and kids and family. So life's good.
Yeah, you're settling down after a long stretch of trip with the guard. Spent some time out in Estonia, right?
Yeah, it was awesome. Cool little place. We got to stay right in Old Town Tallinn. It's pretty wild to stay in a hotel that's older than America.
Yep, absolutely. You've got a good kind of case study for us on the value of having cash value and talking about IBC. What we want to focus on today is what IBC is, and more important, given the proliferation of information, what some call the noise, what IBC is not, what we're trying to do when we set this system up, and what we're not trying to do. So how about a little example of how you've used IBC in your personal life recently and the value of having dry powder, certainty, etc.?
Yeah, one of the things that you see out there all the time, like if you watch the TikTok or as Rafe Damsey says, the Tic Tac, if you watch the TikTok out there and pick up IBC that way, you'll see a lot of things of what I believe it's not. And one of the first orders that you see out there is like, you're going to put money in this vehicle so that you can immediately leverage it to start doing all kinds of things. But we in America have a massive savings problem. So I think one of the things it is having access to capital. So building a big capital base. And that takes time. While the flow of money is the most important thing when it comes to the banking, but you can't flow money that you don't have. And if you just have it in motion, have no reserves, have nothing ever ready, you can really put yourself in a dangerous situation quick, or you don't have access to opportunities. So like Nelson always said, that when you have cash, the opportunities will find you. And what happened here is we moved into a new house just a couple months ago, and everything behind us is like farmland. There's one house, if you're looking at my back porch that you're looking at. Between us was about a little over 5 acres was owned by a gas company. That gas company was assumed by another company who was then going to divest all the land. So I inquired about that land a couple times, never heard back from the company. Then lo and behold, boom, it hits the market right at market rates, and I knew it was something was going to happen fast. It's flat. It's just open farmland surrounded by some homes on like kind of perpendicular around it. Perfect place to build. And that's exactly what nearly happened. So, I bid on it, or multiple builders bid on it, and they wanted to obviously put homes. So they had they had a bunch of contingencies. They had, perk tests. They were going to have to do zoning meetings to make sure that they could subdivide it, all these sorts of things. And I was able to come in with a full cash offer. And they took my offer, even if I don't even know, it might have been less than what the builders were offering, but it was clean. There was, no contingencies, no inspections required. I just said, hey, I can move quick. I can close as soon as you want to. And I can do that simply because I have access to cash. So having access to cash meant that opportunity came available and I was able to jump on it. Had I followed the TikTok example of like, hey, let's put random number arbitrary here, $10,000 into, they usually pitch an IUL, and then we're going to take it right out. We're going to move it. We're going to start investing it, and you're going to do 100 things. I would have no access to capital, and I would have moved into this beautiful house with a picturesque view and had 3 years of construction and 15 or to 20 homes right in my backyard, which would have negated the exact reason we wanted this house. Access to capital just changed the next 40 years of my life, probably. And what, the landscape of where I live and this view I have out the back door. And now I have that additional acreage. Well, I will tomorrow.
There's a few good points in there. One is that you're competing with commercial developers. You're competing with large corporations that are probably very cash heavy, but they have to do a little bit more due diligence. They have to do more analysis, which is going to take time. And if the seller wants cash now, which obviously they did, you aren't competing with your neighbor or a guy that works in town who wants to buy it. I mean, you're miles ahead of them because of your position and the certainty that you can leverage your cash value. Your competition is these corporations, and you won in this case. And going to the idea of this is the whole reason we're doing this is just to invest better, just to invest smarter. As soon as you get this policy, let's take out our cash value and get going. Well, you're not investing in that land in the sense that it's going to create cash flow for you. You invested for quality of life, for the future of your family. You've said before that the only development that land will ever see is if you want to build houses for your family, your kids, keep them on the property, something like that, and who knows what the future will hold. But you bought bare land to keep it bare, right? There's no financial value in that other than for your family's peace of mind. And so if you gone out and leveraged that policy right away with the idea that the reason we're getting into this is to invest, not for the certainty, not for the foundational asset that it is. We're just doing this so that we can immediately go invest. Well, you wouldn't be in the situation that you were in where you're playing with the big dogs, outbidding commercial lenders, commercial developers, et cetera. And you're doing this for your own family. You're not investing in this. It's kind of cool that this is a perfect use case of IBC that has nothing to do with purchasing an asset that's going to return capital to you. It's
Right.
having the ability to pull the trigger for something that is a net expense if we're just looking at the balance sheet. But when we expand beyond that, we're thinking about your family's happiness and quality of life. It's a really cool, unique case study, different than the normal ones we talk about.
Yeah, yeah, because we're normally always talking about how do we flow the money, how do we generate income off of this, but I'm going to pay it back over time. And the beautiful thing, we've talked at length about policy loans. I'm going to pay it back when I want to pay it back, at what rate I want to pay it back. It's going to happen pretty fast because I have some other moving parts in life right now, the sale of another home, things like that. But it was so simple. Like when I talked to them and they accepted the offer, I said, "How quickly can you close?" They chose 30 days just so that the closing company could do their due diligence and do all the background stuff they have to do to give them time. I said, I can go in a week. And so about 2 weeks out from the closing date, which is tomorrow, I requested policy loans from, I took them from a couple of different policies, had them deposited into the local bank that I have. It's been sitting there now for, each one of those took about 3 days until it deposited. So I was there 10 days prior. I drove down this morning to the bank. I got a certified check and I'm ready to go. It was that simple. I didn't have to work with a loan originator. I didn't have to do anything. I literally access to capital and in my own policies that I own and control. And I was able to jump on an opportunity. And I think a lot of people just miss the mark on that. Opportunities will come. I never would have imagined I'd be buying that. When I bought this house, I looked into that because it was there, but it had nothing to do with, well, the bare land had something to do with buying the house, but I wasn't thinking about that. I didn't have this second step plan, this second order of effect when I bought the house. It popped up and I said, let's jump. Like we can do it because I've spent however, I don't know, 8 years now capitalizing these policies. And it's not like that's all that I didn't drain them. That's the other thing. Like I've been capitalizing heavy for 8 years. So I have money doing some of those things that we talk about to generate income. And I still had access to money because I keep a reserve in case another opportunity comes. And that is so important. And I just think that a lot of what you hear out there, the noise completely misses the mark on being well capitalized.
Yeah, and this speaks to the idea that banking is a higher order of operation activity than investing. Like banking, when we talk about it, what we mean is one, the acquisition, the accumulation and preservation of capital, and then understanding the mechanics of how to control the flow in and flow out, getting to pull the levers that actually flow capital out, then having them pulled for you, which is what most people experience before we really start to think this way. Money comes in and it goes out without our control. We don't get much say over the outflow. But we're the dam operator saying when the capital is going to leave our system. To me, that's banking. And everyone could have a little bit different definition of, like, when we say taking over the banking function in our lives, which is a common phrase in the IBC community. the real IBC community, not the TikTok, gimmicky hype side of it. That's what it means to me, is being a dam operator, controlling those levers. And so banking is a higher order of operation activity than investing. Yet, just like people always jump to the conclusion or to the initial thought when exploring this, comparing it to an investment, it's always, we have to just kind of just beat someone with the idea that this is savings. This is not an investment vehicle. We say that over and over and over, and it always creeps in because we're so spring loaded to that. But banking is higher than investing. Investing should come after other things are buttoned up in your financial life, in your financial strategy. And I've talked recently with someone, I'll be vague, about a strategy to use an IUL, where you basically use the IUL to kind of lever and ladder off to get new IULs and continue to expand this system in the
Dude, I
goal.
hate laddering.
It's frustrating. And the thing is, people will take the name infinite banking and say that that's what they're doing, when in reality they're investing. They're putting together an investment strategy with a flavor that smells a little bit like life insurance, with the goal of investing. But there's no conversation about the banking function. So something that was said to me was, well, this is actually, infinite banking, because you can't do infinite banking with a whole life policy. And the reason that was said was because it comes down to the analysis of an arbitrage evaluation, an arbitrage discussion. Well, if you're getting dividend rates of X and internal growth of Y compared to the policy loan rates, you can't get arbitrage in the whole life strategy, which we're not even going to talk about how much that doesn't make sense, especially as we look further down in the life of the contract, when your dividends surpass your entire annual premium payment. So that it's because it scales so aggressively, and it gets exponential down the road, where we can't even really make that linear comparison. And so that doesn't make sense to me, that the value of what we're doing is just arbitrage. The value of what we're doing is being well capitalized in our savings asset in order to take advantage of that economic certainty that we have. And so it just totally misses the mark. And I'm hoping that David Stearns and the folks at the Nelson Nash Institute are able to continue to tighten up the trademark around the term infinite banking, because it's throwing a lot of people off. I'm getting a lot of client referrals lately from a great new source and referral partner, and people are coming with the expectation that what they are getting is something most of them have never heard about it. It's just kind of something that they were loosely introduced to, and they don't know what to expect, honestly. I think most people, but what they're being told about initially is this strategy of laddering IULs. And so it's kind of breaking from that conversation and saying, hey, there is a way to do this. If you want to treat this as an investment, if you want to treat this as an uncertain asset, I'm not your guy. I can refer you to someone who I trust, who can take you that direction, but I'm not going to do it. It's a lot of noise. It's a lot of frustrating misinformation on this, because it is really just simple. It's a black and white contract. It's a 92-page book. You put those things together. We don't need to debate about what is infinite banking, because it's all laid out right there. It's simple and it works. And when we start getting to the idea that investing is a higher order of activity than banking, we're inverted, and we're always going to be relying on a lot of outside forces.
Yeah, and it is so simple. It's, where does your money flow to first? How much do you save? Where do you save it? And how do you finance the things you purchase? That's the first thing. If you think about, in don't put my office together, so my Nelson Nash's book is actually sitting in my bedroom right now. But if you think about it, right in the beginning, he even says this is not about an investment, although it can be used for an investment. That entire book, the basis of the foundation of everything infinite banking, all the things out there, all the noise out there, all the people using IULs, and all the people doing it right, especially, come from what Nelson Nash wrote. And he said it's all about financing the things you buy, because you finance everything you buy. You either pay interest to somebody else, or you give up the interest you could have paid, meaning when you pay cash. That's what that was about. He didn't even depict, like, hey, if you take this money and buy real estate, if you take this money and put it into stocks, if you do land purchases, if you, whatever it is you do, if you do hard money lending, that wasn't even mentioned in the book. Not one time. All he said was you can use this for an investment. He showed examples of a business owner buying trucks, logging trucks, which would be like an investment, but it's something he was going to finance anyway. So in that regard, it was still just about building a pool of capital and using it to finance the things he was going to finance anyway. That example happened to be something in his business that generated revenue, but that's coincidental to the fact that he was simply utilizing this process to finance the things he was going to buy. And I think we get so far away from that we forget, like, we have to buy stuff. We literally just have to have capital and take over the banking function so that when you are purchasing things, that money flows to and through and back to you, into your pool, out of your pool, back into your pool of capital. And that is more profitable than anything you can do, almost chasing the rate of return over a lifetime. And, all the way back to the first thing we were talking about with that land, like, just think about the piece of that. I can make those payments as I want. My family can enjoy that land. I might put, I don't know, a dune buggy track on it. Who knows? I'm probably going to plant some trees. I might end up using it to generate some revenue, and like with trees or things, or lease it to somebody who farms. I have no idea. I haven't even thought about it. But I have the peace of knowing that I have the deed. The bank doesn't hold the deed. There's nobody else in control of that, because I own two things now. I own life insurance policy that is leveraged. There's a loan against that from the company, but what if I don't pay that loan? Is the life insurance company going to take my land?
Nope.
No. Well, I mean, so I still own the life insurance policy. It's still producing for me. It's still earning interest and dividends. I'm paying that back as a good banker, and I own the land outright. Well, I will tomorrow morning. I'll own that land outright. So what a peace of mind in that. All I've done was I just took over the financing of something I would have wanted to do anyway, but had I not capitalized a system, I would have called the local bank and been like, hey, will you loan me money on this? That's hard to do. So opportunity gone. Likely the opportunity would have been gone, because I would have been I would have been not debating. I would have been going up against the people you mentioned who probably were cash rich, these institutional builders, large companies. Yeah, we're missing the mark on literally just capitalizing a system and taking over the banking function, which will end up being the most profitable thing in your life. I'm going to get all that money is going to go back into my system that I'm paying tomorrow. All of that money is going to continue to earn interest and dividends. Both of those things are going to benefit my family, the land and the policy, in more ways than one, because when that money goes back in, I'm going to take advantage of another opportunity at some point. Now, we do invest through these, and that's smart, but I don't think it's the first thing we should be doing is chasing a rate of return.
Yeah, it all comes down to security and not speculation. So going on the theme of what IBC is not, it's not an arbitrage play. It's not just an investing system. It is not speculation. It's security. We're putting security in place there, and a couple of mechanics. Again, kind of underlining a little bit of what you said for newer listeners who might not have listened to some of our Under the Hood series where we talk about these things. When Brian says that you finance everything you buy, and when you pay cash, you're still financing it. An example that we have on our blog, an article, we kind of make the idea of like, hold your cell phone in your hand and pretend it's a little tiny money printer, and you can dial in the interest rate. And if you have a stack of say $30,000, and you go and you imagine that stack instead is this little printer, well, if you have an opportunity to put that money and get 4% interest, 5% interest, 10% interest, whatever your cost of money is, if you have that $30,000 sitting in somewhere that is growing for you, and the money printers is printing out money that you're controlling, well, that is sitting on cash and putting it on, not cash like hard cash, but that is keeping money in your system growing for you. When you go to the dealership and you withdraw $30,000 and hand them $30,000, yes, you didn't incur interest with the dealership. You're not financing through the lending arm of the dealership, but you handed over this little money printer to them, and now they get the enjoyment of the future revenue stream that little money printer, aka your $30,000, is going to do. So when you're saying that we're financing when we pay cash, we're losing this opportunity cost where these dollars that we hand over can never ever grow for us, print money for us again.
That's important, because where does the dealer put the money?
Yeah, right back into growing it and lending it out to other people to create future streams of income.
But I mean, you pay it to, let's say you go to the local Ford dealership, you buy a truck, and you hand them that $30,000. Well, actually $60,000 in today's world, but you hand them that money. What do they do with that $60,000? Do they just stuff it in a drawer? They deposit it in the bank. The bank was making money on your cash that was sitting in a checking or savings account. If you do it
Yeah.
that way, you withdraw that because likely you weren't keeping it in a shoebox either. You withdraw that from the bank. So the bank was using it to make money. You handed it to the dealer. The dealer turned around and put it back in the bank. Who's making the money? The bank. Like the bank is
Yeah.
always profitable through that entire transaction because it's just going right back. Well, maybe it's a different bank, but some bank somewhere is just making all the profit off of your money if you don't own and control it and you don't receive the interest, the dividends, and the leverage of that money, whether it's being used or not. It's out of your life. You're not earning interest and dividends on it anymore. I mean, you might have been from the bank, a small amount of interest, but they were using it to lend more money through fractional reserve banking. You took that away, it tapped their reserves for a day while it transacted through the dealership and back into the bank. Now they're making money on it again. So
Yeah.
let's be the person who's making the money every time. Let's be the banker. That's the guy who's getting all the profit from this deal. Sure, the dealership got some profit. Sure, you got the truck you wanted. They made a profit in the margin. They didn't make a profit in the banking function. The bank continued to make all the profit on that money. They continued to lend on that money. They continued to earn on that money. So we can do that. That's what we do. That's what infinite banking is. The banker made the most money on that entire deal out of anybody.
And going back to mechanics, how that works is we can listen to our episode on policy loan. You can read our article on the blog about policy loans. But when you're leveraging that, and Brian said, I've now got this land and I've got a whole life policy. And you said, you stipulated, yes, the whole life policies are leveraged. And what you did was you borrowed against it without reducing its value. So that the cash value that you have, the same amount of cash value as you had before you took out the policy loan is still in force in full without ever being depleted. And that amount is what's growing and generating interest, generating dividends. You didn't reduce it by the amount that you borrowed. So you're getting the full growth of that. If you were to pass with the loan outstanding, your wife would get the amount of the death benefit less the outstanding loan, and she would also get the land. I mean, she already has the land, you know what I'm saying? But just kind of generally speaking, I'm not leaving my wife just the rental properties that I purchased. I'm also leaving her an enormous whole life policy that I used to purchase the rental properties. And so we're doing both things here. And so that's when we talk about how you can do this, you can leverage that certainty. I just want to go back to a little bit of the mechanical side of it for people that are like, oh, this sounds interesting, but I don't understand, because our experience with, we have money in the checking account and we withdraw it, and now the balance goes down and we go and we spend that on something else. Or maybe you have a 401k and you take out a 401k loan. Well, your balance on the 401k goes down. And so you're like, you might think of it as, I've had money here and I just moved it to a different side. And now I decreased one to build up the other. So is it really advantageous? Well, in this case, you're not decreasing the value of your cash value when you borrow against it. You're leveraging it, but then you're going and purchasing other things. So you're actually, your tide is rising across the board. And that gets more into the mechanics of stuff. Please go read the article that we have on the blog, walks through it, how we actually use the policy loan and this concept. But if we do have new listeners who haven't listened to that one, I just want to underline a little bit of the mechanics there.
Yeah, and another thing back to what it's not that drives me crazy with, we'll call it the noise as well, is a lot of these organizations that just want you to move money, like, hey, let's put it into this place so we can leverage it so we can start investing and earning this rate of return. Again, I like that at a certain point. I think for most people, the primary thing that your infinite banking, system should be is an emergency and opportunity fund. So you should have like, what's the minimum amount of money you'll let your cash value go down to consider
Mm-hmm.
for emergencies? And then above that, it starts to be opportunities. And maybe above that is where it starts to become investment money. Everybody's going to have a different theoretical design on how much that is and where that is. But in my opinion, emergency opportunity first. And that opportunity is what I took advantage of. But, beyond that, like, what is the riskiest investment you can make? I think it's one where you don't really know what you're doing. The reason the market is not very risky overall for Warren Buffett is because he knows exactly what he's doing and he understands it more than probably anybody else out there. For people who are really successful in options trading, the reason they're extremely successful is because they really understand the analytics and what they're doing. The people who really do really well in real estate, that's all they're into. So the more you know and the better you are at something, the less risky that investment is always going to be. There's always risk, of course, that's assumed with any investment, no matter what, but you can mitigate that risk by having high level knowledge. And one of the problems I see out there, like on TikTok, is let's get this into here, and you're instantly going to start lending it out to people. You're instantly going to start doing things, and you don't even, I think it's going to catch people by surprise because they get so excited in the hype. It's like, hey, you can make all this great rate of return by leveraging this, making money in two places. And they're almost convinced to put money into things that they probably don't know a lot about. Now, if you're already a seasoned real estate investor and you discover infinite banking and you realize, hey, if I just capitalize this policy first and I can leverage that money so it's doing two things at one time and do what I'm already doing, great, use it for an investment. But what I fear is that the hype is it gets people excited and they don't even know what they're doing when they invest. So learn something first and then leverage your IBC. Learn a thing. We have a client who's gotten into land flipping, and he seems to be doing okay with it. But like, he dug in, he paid a mentor, he learned how to flip land, and started small and started baby stepping his way into bigger stuff and learning how to do it with some success. That's the way to do it. So he didn't jump in and say, I want to move all this money that I built in capital and flow it into big land deals and start making this happen. That would have been stupid. He started learning and now could teach us things about it. Nobody talks about that, like the education side of when you start leveraging your policy.
That's yeah. Shout out to Will Light again. I think we shouted him out last episode too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, he's got a couple of deals that are starting to come through, and it's been like a year-long journey for him. Like you said, he did a course. He's doing some one-on-one coaching, and he's paying a pretty significant. I mean, I'm his currents advisor, the app that we talk about, where you can better accumulate your saving. Listen to our episode on currents. We can hit on that. So I can see his cash inflows and outflows, and he spent and we talked through this. So I'm not just like watching his spending through currents, but we've talked through this decision, and he invested a significant amount of money into the one-on-one coaching and training here. He's got the LLC set up. He went and talked to Tax Sherpa, got his business stuff streamlined there. He put a lot of foundation in place before he just started buying these properties, and he started small, and now he's starting to get down payments for these coming in, and that's a year, and that's still, it feels like a long time. That's still very short term, but he put all these guardrails in place. We have come to expect, I think, a lot of the meme stock, a lot of the crypto has kind of conditioned people for very, very short, just these insane upward candlesticks where you can double your money overnight kind of mindset. But when we think about it, we have to know that the past is, it says it on the prospectus, the past is not indicative of future performance. But we have to know that there's really almost no correlation when we're talking about something we don't understand or control, i.e. the market. The S&P 500 is just 7 companies. Most of the market's down, but 7 companies have kept that thing going. So you're not really diversified when you're invested in the S&P. You're invested basically in 7 companies and a bunch of non-productive companies. And yes, those have gone up over the long term. John Perrings made a good point on his podcast recently called Stacked Life, where he talked about, yes, we have over the last 90 years of the S&P 500 data, we've got a lot of 30-year segments, right? We've got something like 60 different segments of 30 years of data, but they're overlapping so much. In reality, there's really only 3 30-year, reviews of the market that don't overlap to give us data points. That's not a lot of data points. Or when people talk about crypto, alt season's coming up. If you don't follow crypto news at all, like, you don't even know what I'm saying. That sounds like nonsense, but they're like, oh yeah, when this one goes up, the other ones surge. And then every amount of time we have this alt season. It's like, well, okay, we've had 3 of them or 4 of them, but we're not talking about enough data points here to really make a meaningful guess on what's going to happen in the future. And as always, we're not saying don't invest. We're never saying don't invest. I think you really need to grow your money now because the government has indicated that they're incapable of cutting spending. No Republican will ever cut spending. Elon Musk couldn't do it. It'll never, ever, ever happen. 0 people in Congress are going to cut spending, with the exception of probably Thomas Massie, he is calling out the spending, rightfully so, and he's getting attacked by it's full retardery to think that this administration has any intention of cutting the budget. They don't. They never will. No administration. This is not a knock on this administration. It's not a criticism of the Biden administration, and it's not a knock on Trump. Like, neither of them have any ability to cut spending because Congress won't, because the system can't handle it. So the deficit is going to continue to grow. The spending is not going to be cut. You need to plan as if those things will never stop. And therefore, you need to make sure you have a very strong growth component. That's not our role. We're not saying don't do that. I think you need to do that. But always, always, always remember that that growth component can be, it's on quicksand if you don't have this foundational piece in place first. And so draw a heavy line in between protection and savings and your investment, and make sure that those first two are taken care of first. Because what good is having a 12% consist if you can actually, the market doesn't actually do 12%. That's an average rate of return. We talk about that a lot too, but name your rate of return that you want. You're getting that. That's great. In 30 years with compounding interest, you're going to be living good. But if you get disabled, and that all goes to medical bills right now, like all of these what ifs, what if, we need to get to the point where those what ifs are minimized to as low as we can possibly get. We can't mitigate all risk, but we can mitigate most of the risk that people accept when they're talking about their savings. We can mitigate most of what they accept.
Yeah. We talk about protect, save, grow. So on the life side of this, and there's a lot of other protections we need to take care of as well, because, as we've talked about, wealth happens on a curve, and you're on two parallel paths, protection path and the wealth path. And if you aren't protected, like, you don't have a right to the wealth curve. So anything can happen in your life that could disrupt that. A lot of things can happen. And I'm sure you can imagine a whole bunch of things that of people around you that their wealth curve stopped, even if they were going strong. So, wealth can come in seasons, or it can come long and slow, or it can come quick and fast and remain, but you need to be protected to protect that curve and let it keep growing for you through life. And one of the first way you're going to do that is protection and savings, capitalizing this system or capitalizing a system. Even if you're not going to do infinite banking, like, have some powder, have some cash, be ready for a downfall, have that emergency fund. We know, and we'll tell you the best place to put that, because of all the ancillary benefits that whole life offers, is going to be whole life insurance, properly structured for the infinite banking concept. And then find your niche, find the thing that you know the most about. Like, I know a good bit about the airline industry, which is why I would never buy an airline stock. So it's like, it's kind of funny. It's just like, I know not to do that, because I have some, you could look at the numbers, and there was a time it was just like, oh my gosh, like, Delta's such a good buy. And maybe it was, and maybe you made some money, but like, if you know the industry, you realize the risk you're putting into that. So learn something that you can get really good at and invest there. And that's going to be your greatest place to get that actual rate of return that you're chasing on a strong foundation. And it's funny, you mentioned the market there in the 30-year clips, and I just pulled this up because I was reading it, I don't know, like 2 days ago or something, but macrotrends.net, the starting price of the Dow Jones Industrial Average at the beginning of the 20th century was $68. That site found that the Dow closed 100 years later at 11,457. So the present value of 68, future value 11,457 over 100 years is an annual interest rate of 5.26%. I just wanted to point that out because you were talking about the mythical 12% average rate of return. So that's interesting. And then if you took that from that year, the turn of the century, to 2021, when this was written, which is a few years old, but it still shows you the same thing. 21 years, it went from 11,457 to 34,500, which is an annual interest rate. Take a guess.
5%.
5.39. So a little better than the 100 years prior, but it's a shorter snapshot, which means, we hit some big market, who knows what the long term will be. But interesting that everybody wants to chase that rate of return, but long and slow is the key. And speaking to, I'm just going to bring this up quickly because it's something I'm learning. Like, I got involved with a group, which is awesome, called Low Stress Trading. Like, you can look it up online, with Troy Broussard. And what they teach is options trading under very particular methods. I haven't put a nickel into the market yet because I'm learning the framework. And under their framework, all the people that learn this are averaging about 1% a week. Sounds measly, right? But that's like 67% a year on your money. So
Yep.
the point is, I don't know it well enough yet to dump a bunch of money in, and I'm going to start small, and I'm going to ops test this. And, once I see it working out for 12, 13, 14 weeks, which honestly, it's like 100% credible, the people in there that are doing it are showing what they're doing. And it's like, it works. If you follow a framework and you get the education, you spend the potentially months learning it before you dive in small and test it. Dive in small and test it, learn it, just like we talked about with Will on his land deals. Just like with most real estate investors, start off with a single family house, and eventually they might be buying, apartment buildings. Don't think that IBC is the way that you're going to take money and make it in the market, or in any kind of investments. Build that capital base, then learn something. I'm going to learn this options trading. I'm going to test it out. If it works, I can't wait to bring it to our clients. And then I have a place to leverage the leverageable capital I've built above and beyond my emergency opportunity fund. That's where you're going to make money. Long, slow, and just, not chasing huge rates of return. That is risk. And that is what TikTok teaches, which is not what infinite banking is.
Yeah. This is a system. This is not speculation. Said it before. When we look 30 years down the road at what our policies are doing, the growth on these is enormous, and everyone gets on board with that. Everyone, if you show you dollar in versus dollar of cash value growth, what the death benefit has grown to, and we compare it to anywhere else your money could be stored in a savings vehicle, 100% of people would take this, but it takes some time to get there. A year feels long for us right now, but a year is very, very short. I got clients, that have worked with us who are coming up on, 4 or 5 years in their policy. I'm myself, I'm at that point where I'm already feeling, I'm coming up on my 4th year. So I'm already starting to see the fruits of my labor there, where it took me a few years of having a little less in my policy in terms of cash value than I had put into the system. But I'm already starting to get to parity on that point. And once I get past that point, I've spent the time building up this engine, and now the engine's starting to really get efficient. And eventually it's going to go from, it's never as bad as wind or solar energy, but it's coming up on, it starts out maybe electric. Now I'm cooking with gas right now. But when I'm at quote retirement age, I'm going to be humming along on nuclear power there. It's like a tiny little bit of input is going to generate an enormous return. So just like Will's taking that time to learn, just like you're dipping your toe in and watching and learning and developing your understanding before you dive into this, investing right now in a business that is a policy. You're starting a business. It takes a little bit of time to get a positive cash flow, and then you're off to the races. And so none of what we're talking about, if you watch the TikTok hype videos, if you watch this kind of treatment of this as if this is just a way to invest, this is a means to an end. The end is still the investing. The policy is just the means. We're in an arbitrage here. Infinite banking is just getting a little bit better loan rate than you do, your dividend growth rate, et cetera. If that's what you're focusing on, you're still focusing on the third order effect. You're skipping over the real value in your system, and the only aspect of your system that's going to return multiple to your family if in case you don't make it as far as these projections go. So we really want to bring people's focus away from, when you see all this hype on it, infinite banking is not complicated, even though it's a big learning curve for us when we start this. It's actually very simple, and it doesn't need to be hyped. It doesn't need to be this urge to get money moving right away. Ryan Griggs says it well, an economist who's one of the main economic minds in the IBC community, is that simply having a policy in force and paying premium is doing something. It's doing something very powerful, and you're on the early stage of the growth curve here. But just getting going on this is a positive first step.
Absolutely. And honestly, if I just flow all the money that I had through, which I'm not at a place I can do yet, that takes time, as Nelson said, I'd be happy with just this. No rental properties, no outside loans, you know, no options trading. Like, this will secure my family's future by itself, just
Yep.
taking over all the financing in my life. That alone will do it. Now, true, I can use it to leverage and have other forms of cash flow and build greater wealth. But like this is something, and this is something massive. This is such a strong foundation. It's you don't have to listen to any of the hype. It's super simple. Who is controlling the banking function of your life? Where do you save? Are you saving in the optimal environment? Do you have a proper emergency opportunity fund so you can strike when the opportunities are hot and you can weather storms and you can finance the things in your life? That's infinite banking.
Yep. Yeah, this is we're putting in place a foundation of not losing. We're putting
Yeah.
certainty, the idea of economic value of certainty. It can't really be measured in the way that we're used to measuring, but it is so powerful and it's such a peaceful way of understanding your finances, understanding your financial strategy, and not looking at the market. And I use Joe Withrow's portfolio, his kind of curated selection of stocks. When I do buy stocks, I buy those stocks, but I don't have the stock app on my phone. I'm not looking at their prices. Like I understand his reasoning for why these stocks, I have it set to automatically sell at his exit points if that's, if there is a defined one. But in general, like I'm not stressing about the market. I've got an allocation of each check that comes in that goes into those investments, but I'm not in there stressing and worrying about the price fluctuation of these because I do understand the difference between these elements of my financial strategy here. So when something pops up on your Facebook Shorts or whatever, YouTube Shorts, newsreel, anything like that, where it's just you'll get a sense of if this is just trying to sell you an investment system.
It's not an
But
investment, and it's a system for taking over the financing of your life and for your family so that multi-generations never have to use the banks and always profit from the banking function. That's it.
yeah,
And banking is the most profitable business in the world. So
yep.
to do it, take it over, become the banker. There's a way, and we'll show you. Hey, we'd appreciate it if you like, subscribe, share if you enjoyed this. Look forward to chatting again, man.
Sounds good. Cheers.
All right, see ya.